So a pretty entertaining, pretty good fight took place over in Thailand today between the WBC Minimumweight Champion Kayapan Munsri, aka Wanheng Menayothin, who successfully made his 47th victory in professional boxing, 47-0 with 17 knockouts now, where he managed to defeat by unanimous decision one Omari Kimweri of Australia by way of Tanzania. And it was really just, like I said in the intro, just a hell of a fight between these two. Especially considering just Kimweri did, just the way he went all out against Menayothin. That pretty much leads me into the way that I scored it. First round, Kimweri was pretty much giving Menayothin the business. He was coming at him at all angles with just a multitude of punches. Has a very Mayorga or Maidana-esque style to him. Just coming at you with, throwing these wide hooks, at fairly high speed. He's definitely not a slow fighter. And, switching stances, changing angles, changing, the velocity of everything. Just making himself extremely difficult to be able to time. And the thing is, Menayothin tends to, take the early rounds off, especially the first. He doesn't usually even start really get going until the second or even the third in some of his fights. But here, it seemed like he was almost somewhat overwhelmed with just the amount of punches that Kimweri was throwing. But I think he was trying to play it, a little bit closer to the chest, be a little bit defensive about it. He did manage to land a couple of good shots here and there, but overall, it was pretty much all Kimweri in the first round. The unfortunate thing that happened, though, is there wound up being a clash of heads, which opened up a cut over Menayothin's left eye. And due to the way that the WBC has their ruling, where in a championship fight, especially a championship fight that's outside of the United States, if a clash of heads causes a headbutt, if a clash of heads causes a cut, then the fighter that was cut, the fighter that caused the cut, the fighter that wasn't cut, basically is deducted a point for that. It's in an effort to try and equalize the scoring, and if a cut gets really bad, that it basically is an effort in order to take some of that cut that was caused by a head clash, that was caused by something accidental, out of the equation in terms of who was actually winning the fight, basically, because, there is a possibility that a cut could get worse from legal blows, but it wasn't necessarily caused by legal blows, and that could wind up swaying just the overall scoring of the fight. But I thought Kimweri was winning it, so unfortunately, basically that became an even round because, he otherwise won the round. Second round, I thought was a Kimweri round again. I thought Menayothin was able to get off a little bit more of his shots, a little bit better in the second round. But overall, still, Kimweri was just swarming him with those shots at all angles and just that wild style of his. It almost reminded me of Maidana in the first fight against Mayweather, where he would just coming at him and pushing him back, and then they would kind of engage in clinches, and he would push Menayothin back and continue hitting him to the body in the clinch, and then hit him up top in the head, even if they weren't necessarily entirely legal blows. He'd be hitting him, on the side of the head, the back of the head, etc. Just basically trying to make contact whenever, wherever, however, in order to just make things uncomfortable for Menayothin and just wear him down by any means necessary, basically. But I thought the second round definitely went to Kimweri. Third round, it seemed like Menayothin started to finally turn around, get into a rhythm that he was looking for the first couple of rounds. Started kind of sharpshooting up the middle. It seemed like basically being able to either counter those wild swings, those wild wide swings from Kimweri, or being able to kind of lead into a shot like a straight jab and then followed by a right hand up the middle was working really nicely for him because of the fact that Kimweri tended to throw everything more looping. He would throw everything looping, and then even if the shot wouldn't necessarily land, it's like the velocity of it would hit maybe Menayothin's gloves or his high guard or what have you, and it would push him off bounds. And so it's it just not even just gives the visual of that he might be getting hurt or pushed around or whatever, but just the fact that he's being pushed off bounds and everything, it makes it so that even some of the shots that he was landing weren't necessarily landing with as much punctuation as they otherwise could have. But that being said, Menayothin was able to land some pretty nice shots. Actually, incidentally, the jab, just the straight jab, just a hammer, like a jackhammer jab up the middle was actually working really nicely, as well as a nice check left hook that he managed to land a couple of times when Menayothin would when Kimweri would throw a wild swing, Menayothin would able to just shoot that short, sharp left hook down the pipe and just catch him repeatedly with it. Didn't necessarily do it through an entire fight, but there were certain moments where he managed to catch him either on Kimweri's way in or as they were about to break out of a clinch. He'd managed to catch him with that left hook. Timed it really nicely. The fourth round, I thought, was a really close round. Kimweri was just swamping Menayothin with volume. Once again, volume to the head, volume to the body, just trying to touch him and hit him whenever, wherever. And Menayothin tended to be a bit more sharp. And with this round, I mean, it really could have gone either way. I thought Kimweri edged it, though. I think his volume was overall just a little bit more effective than Menayothin's clean, sharp punching. He was landing hard, sharp punches, but Kimweri was largely able to kind of like just walk through him, shake him off, and then just keep going about his business of just outworking and overworking Menayothin, working him over in certain spots as well. So I thought he deserved to win that one. From 5 through 9, though, I thought Menayothin just went on a hell of a run. Except for in the 9th round, I think the tide was starting to, or excuse me, except for the 8th round. I thought, Kimweri possibly could have nicked that round, but I still gave it to Menayothin. It was basically just largely a volume versus precision matchup throughout most of those rounds. I think the 5th, the 9th, and the 6th probably were the most clear-cut rounds for Menayothin, just based off of how clean he was able to land the shots, as well as the fact that in the 5th and the 6th in particular, it seemed like Kimweri was getting a little arm weary, but it seemed like he was timing a little bit, like the pace that even he set, he wasn't quite able to keep up. And when it came down to just kind of picking 1 or 2 shots at a time and trying to box in that fashion, he was at a big disadvantage in comparison to Menayothin. Menayothin just had better rhythm and better timing to his shots. But that said, I mean, there were certain times where Kimweri managed to land a clean, hard shot, and just Kimweri's physical strength, his physicality overall, would kind of push Menayothin back. But that said, Menayothin, it seemed like he was almost kind of taking over the fight by that point, up until the 10th round, where I thought Kimweri managed to edge that round, and that was another kind of swing round. I thought Kimweri just was able to nick it, though. But then in the 11th and the 12th, I basically thought that Menayothin was able to, finish the fight out with class. The 11th especially, I thought, was definitely a Menayothin round. The 12th was a little bit closer. Kimweri definitely gave him something to think about on the way out of the fight. Interestingly, though, the WBC did have open scoring for this fight through 4 rounds. I know all 3 judges had it actually 3 rounds to 1 for Menayothin, which definitely goes against my card in the early rounds. Through 8 rounds, they had it. All 3 judges had it. What was it? I think they all had it 6 rounds to 2 for Menayothin, and then in the end, they wound up having it 10 rounds to 2 on 2 of the judges' scorecards, and then let's see, what is it? I guess it was 8 rounds to, or excuse me, let me see, 9 rounds to 3. 9 rounds to 3 on the other judges' scorecard. So 10 rounds to 2 and 9 rounds to 3. So basically, I wound up having it 8 rounds to 3 with 1 even. That's the way that I saw it, because I thought Kimweri should have won the first round, but he got the point deducted, called it an even round. I'm guessing that the judges wound up giving that round to Menayothin. I'm not too sure about that. I think Menayothin kind of got the benefit of the doubt there. But I mean, that said, a really good fight between these two. Entertaining for the most part. Seemed like it started to get a little bit too clinchy, too much hugging. Probably around like the 7th until about the 10th. But pretty much the 1st through the 6th and the last couple of rounds, I thought, were really, really entertaining rounds to be had. And I mean, Kimweri just showed just a level of endurance and stamina by and large. I mean, just the activity that he had. I think he can give a lot of guys problems. I wouldn't be surprised to see him back in title contention fairly soon. I'd love to see him against knockout CP Freshman. I think he'd be a very viable contender for him. He has a very similar style to Byron Rojas, the fighter that knockout CP Freshman managed to unify the WBA titles against. Byron Rojas was the one that defeated Hecky Butler, who was one of the kind of the premier stars at 105 pounds, or even at just the lower weights in general. But Byron Rojas managed to put that to rest. And Kimweri has a very similar style to him, just high volume, all out, trying just a war of attrition type style. Him versus Rojas actually would be a really good fight as well. Him versus Argumedo too. As for Menayothin, he's now 47-0. Of course, just the fact that that record is there, I mean, I think is gonna get a lot of attention from a lot of people. Who knows? Maybe they'll be able to build off of that. Maybe get him some Western exposure and stuff. I definitely like to see it. I definitely think that he deserves it. I think a lot of the fighters really, just generally speaking, deserve it. And it's kind of a shame that sometimes they kind of wind up only fighting in their home country, like only fighting in Thailand, for instance. But I mean, I definitely like to see him come out. Even out to Japan, out to the U.S. especially though, if they're able to make maybe a unification or have him fight some of the other high level contenders. I do know that he has a new mandatory. I'm trying to think of the guy's name now. That I'm like blanking on his name as I make this. Leroy Estrada. Leroy Estrada, who just defeated Saul Juarez. I just did a recap on that this past week. So Leroy Estrada is actually going to be his mandatory. I think that's actually a really interesting fight. Estrada's a pretty slick fighter. Has a lot of skills, good body puncher as well. I think him versus Menayothin makes a pretty interesting, tactical, technical type matchup. And if he was to defeat him, and hopefully at least unify one of the belts or something, I definitely think that that he'll be deserving of being able to, potentially break that 49-0 record, for whatever it's worth. I mean, a lot of people I think get a little bit overhyped about it. But I mean, that's a whole nother story. It's like a whole nother video. I could go on for a lot longer of a time in terms of people's obsession with that number, and Marciano and Mayweather and Larry Holmes and all kinds of things. But Menayothin has had a couple of tough fights recently. So I mean, I can't necessarily say that he's any kind of paper champion or unworthy as a champion to be, definitely held in high esteem at the very least. To me, he's the best fighter, 105 pounds. He's managed to prove that repeatedly, and the wins over Saul Juarez and Melvin Jerusalem, and really tough fights where there was a lot of skill shown. I think just kind of help further prove that. Although I do still give Jose Argumedo, as I mentioned before, the IBF champ, a good chance against Menayothin. Matter of fact, I give the WBO champ Tatsuya Fukuhara a pretty good chance against him also. I think both guys are very, very live in that fight. I mean, I'm not necessarily counting somebody like a knockout CP Freshman out, but I don't know. It seems like him and Menayothin styles are so similar, but I think Menayothin just does a little bit better than knockout CP Freshman. It seems like CP tends to be a little bit more like energetic, but Menayothin's a little bit more precise, and I just favor that precision over the energy. But you never know. You never know when that energy can just kind of overwhelm the more moderately paced fighter. It definitely has happened before. I mean, as I mentioned before, Rojas versus Hecky Butler, that was absolutely an example of that. But as I usually do, I'm going to put the link in the description. I hope you guys check it out. I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy some of these fights that don't necessarily get as much play. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.